Para here from the Paradox Billies channel. Today I'm going to be looking at the top 32 decks from the GFC20 that just passed. That being said, to preference it, a lot of Chaos Turbo, a lot of Warrior, and some Burn, and then kind of from there, just kind of one-ofs or two-ofs of certain decks. But primarily, I would imagine if you were to look beyond the 32, you would see the majority of it being Chaos Turbo. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at it. So first place here, we have Lucas. I believe that's how they say their name. Maybe it's yeah. So it's a warrior deck, pretty straightforward. 3 Blade Knight, Blackluster Soldier, all the typical warrior type cards you want to see. 2 Mystic Swordsman and Grandmaster Sasuke and Tribe, all 4 in a row. I don't know if they made this with that in mind, but maybe it's actually in alphabetical order. It might be. But it's actually kind of funny because Mystic Swordsman, Grandmaster, and Tribe all take care of Spy, which is a big problem when you're facing against like an entire wave of turbo players. I think the thing that's probably and that kind of goes back and forth on, whether people main it or side it, is Trap Dust Shoot. They're running 3 in the main deck, so obviously we're playing to beat turbo, which they did a great job at doing. So the side deck, 3 Spy, probably against aggro. King Tiger against would be good against goats, or Burn, even any tokens, that sort of reasoning gate. There was a reasoning gate in the top 32, I believe. We'll see a Magician of Faith becoming more common to use. Really, you can get a lot of value. High impact card if you do get it off. You're more likely to get it off on game 2, so having the side makes sense. Mobius for maybe the Warrior matchup, same for Spirit Reaper and Zombara. Brain Control whenever you bring in a Mobius. Mind Control for the Chaos Turbo, and Mystic Walk for the Burn, which there were a few of. So congratulations to this player. There isn't really much to say about this deck. Obviously it's a good deck. There are many decks that are very similar to it, so yeah, we'll move on. So I'm not going to go through every single list in detail, and it would take a lot of time, not trying to make this video super long, but in general, we'll just kind of look at it from this preview right here, unless there's something particularly interesting. So Chaos Turbo, second place, very standard turbo. Maybe the thing that's not as common nowadays is seeing the Tsukiyomis and the 3 Trap Dust Shoot, trying to beat other turbos, obviously, with the Trap Dust Shoot and the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, and the Jar of Greeds at 3. So obviously trade out turbo there, the turbo decks, which makes sense because that's turbo's whole idea. I'll have some closing thoughts on what I think about the meta as a whole and the health and of it and whatnot towards the end. But moving through, a Flip Warrior, which is very similar to Warrior, just they used, in this case, 2 Spy and a Magician of Faith. Those are really the only differences. Everything else, or in the Dekorchi. So actually I watched some of this duelists matches, and they just played really well in general. So could have easily been any of these people, but particularly one instance of a game can just be the deciding factor when you're playing like very high level, very high stress types of games. Seeing more mind control on the main deck, which you did from there. You'll see it in the 4th one as well, 4th place. Once again, Trap Dust Shoots. Maybe Dust Shoots are going to become more common. It's a pretty, I wouldn't want to say degenerate card, but it doesn't feel good to have it used on you, especially if they Delinquent Duo and Trap Dust Shoot. It just feels so difficult to come back from. And it is factually difficult to come back from. But, if you're playing this game, you're aware of those cards' existences. It is what it is. There's no reason to be upset about it. So the last thing you want to do is be negative when something like that happens, because it could easily be you being the one that does it. So, it is just a game at the end of the day, and you're aware of the rules, right? So, but Panda Burn, so 5th place, and actually a lot of Burn players here. 3 Panda Burn in a row for 5th, 5th, tied for 5th. Okay, 5th and 7th. That was throwing me off there for a second. A lot of the deck is the same. The 5th place used a little bit more monsters than the other 2. And Amazon Archer actually in the 7th place deck, which is interesting. probably makes it particularly good in the burn matchup, actually. So, because I think that card, which is side by the fourth place warrior deck here, is actually a really good strategy. So to take care of Ultramont tokens. But yeah, so moving on, Chaos Turbo, pretty straightforward. Warrior, pretty straightforward. One thing I will note after I kind of grazed, just kind of like look through these lists is that a lot of upstarts are not being used anymore, and the warrior. There was a moment there where there was like a increase of people using upstarts and warriors to try to get to their cards, but I really don't think it's a super long-term strategy for warriors anyway, because the whole idea of warriors is like whatever card you're really good in the top deck situations. So upstarts are really, in my mind at least, I could be mistaken, are really good for decks that are not good in top deck situations, or in the case of Turbo, wanting to get to the more cards so you can begin to recycle them and abuse them as fast as you possibly can. If you're not really doing those two strategies, say for example a combo oriented deck or like a Chaos Turbo sort of deck, Upstart doesn't really make too much sense to me, unless you're really trying to get to things like really fast. Like for example, if you have like a particular floodgate sort of strategy, or I think upstarts can actually go into main decks if you have a particularly bad matchup that you want to get to your side deck cards as fast as possible. So there are reasons to use it for sure outside of Chaos Turbo and outside of the combo decks. But moving on, lots of Chaos Turbo and Chaos Control. Chaos Control deck is first Chaos Control deck? Yeah, I think so. So I think Chaos Control and Go Control could actually potentially make a comeback, because a lot of people don't have a lot of answers. If you look at these other players, say if we go back here and we look at the top player here, I mean, outside of Solemns and a Ring, and of course the standard like Exile Tribe sort of stuff, there really aren't too. Well, actually, I lied. In this particular deck, there are a lot of outs to Thousand Eyes Restrict, so and for the Book of Moons or whatnot. So I actually just saw those there. So maybe that was a difference maker. I'm not sure, but I didn't see if they played any War or Goat Control or Chaos Control type decks. But you can see that not too many people actually have Book of Moons. I don't know about their side decks. Maybe they side them, but people not siding Book of Moon or not maining Book of Moon will give it a potential and chance of Goat Control having a place to in the meta. Again. Alright, so moving on. Another Chaos Turbo deck. Notice the ratios of a lot of Chaos Turbos seems to be 20 monsters, generally speaking. If you're ever deck building, I do recommend, even if you want to build kind of a different variant of these, using the ratios like Warriors, remaining between 13 to 15, Chaos Turbo usually having 20, so it seems. Just those kind of details make a big difference when getting your deck to work synergetically. At the end of the day, luck is a factor, but minimizing that luck is what's going to help you kind of be more consistent. Chaos Turbo, this is a unique one here with Earthbeat. Obviously a deck that's been kind of getting more popular recently. I actually think I will probably start playing something like this in the future, along with maybe another deck that I'll discuss here in a second. But I really like this. I think it's just a fun deck. It's a really good deck. Has a lot of good answers to a lot of these other meta relevant decks. So not too much to say about it, but just really fun, cool. I really like DD Assailant. I think it's a really cool card. Chaos Turbo again, pretty standard. Moving on here, a little faster. Chaos Return deck, which was I don't know if this is the exact build or very similar to. I actually don't think it is the exact, because I believe the World Championship deck actually used Shining Angels, if I'm not mistaken. But I think I like Return as a card myself. I play a lot of Strike Ninja. Obviously, Strike Ninja is not the absolutely most meta deck, but it is a really fun deck, and I do think it can win. It just isn't super consistent all the time. But when you get a return off it, and it's actually in an advantageous situation, it feels really good. I do feel like with the return, though, you often have to go in more on the return to get the value out of it, if that makes sense. Kind of playing it as a secondary sort of option can often feel like you draw it at a time that you're already winning, or it's just a kind of a win more sort of situation. Um, but I'm sure that it worked. It worked pretty well for this. This was a big tournament of 178 people or so, or five. 17th place is definitely good. Um, so FTK economics. I think most people know how this deck works. It is what it is. There's really not much to explain. It kind of is just a system that works itself. Um, more Chaos Turbo, a Warrior deck. Yeah, you see this Chaos Turbo as almost identical between this 17th 17th, with the exception of the Regeki breaks and see the Book of Moons and an additional Tsukiyomi. Trying to see here, just looking back and forth, but very similar decks. Um, and Goat Control deck with Zaborgs instead of Air Knights makes sense. I actually do think Air Knight, even though Air Knight has like, if you know anything about the history of Goat format, Air Knight used to be the go-to light monster to tribute off Thousand Eyes of Strength, but it isn't really anymore because people found out about Blade Knight being really strong, and there's two cards, Blade Knight and Gravekeeper Spy, both kind of um, really feel demoralizing when you have an Air Knight that you tributed a monster for. That being said, in the right situations, Air Knight can just be really, really good. And there's a lot of cards you can use to. You can't really be, in my opinion, be afraid of those two types of cards. But the cool thing about Zaborg is it does get rid of Spy. The not cool thing is it does lose to Tsukiyomi, so it is, whatever it is. But I think Zaborg's a really good card. Um, Moving on, we'll go a little faster because we're not getting through these super fast. Another Go Control deck with three Metamorphoses. It's always nice to see. They have a Fusilier Dragon, aka the Tractor Dragon. I think getting the King Dragon out is some people just don't have an answer to that card outside of Mirror Force, um, or Solemn Judgment or something like that. So it could be a really big problem. More Chaos Turbo decks. Once again, kind of just notice the ratios. Also, they kind of all Chaos Turbo kind of at this point has been very optimized and all very similar. Reasoning Gate deck, only Reasoning Gate deck, I think, and it's yeah, I mean it seems to be a pretty standard Reasoning Gate type of deck, really. Nothing really that stands out to me. Surprised there isn't some sort of Stein in there just to have a level 2, but maybe they slide it in, I'm not sure. And these decks, which I actually really like the cat kind of. Oh, there was this tournament and like a Patreon tournament recently as well, where a cat OTK deck was first and second, I believe. Um, this player, Pui, is how you pronounce her name, I believe. They were first place, and Alethea were second place in the Patreon tournament. I really like these types of decks a lot. Cat is the other deck that I'm considering playing up, like along with Earth Beatdown strategy. So I think both are really cool and have a place to potentially make some good upsets. And then a Chaos Control deck down here. So that's it really for the top 32 list. Some closing thoughts I wanted to say were first of all, congratulations to everyone that made it into top 32. Very impressive. So secondly, I feel like you know uh, there's obviously some decks that are dominating the field as far as popularity, and if you would dive deeper into the brackets from top 32 down to the you know before day 2, for example, most of the decks in the field probably were Chaos Turbo variety, and I think the reasoning for that is pretty simple. It's just a matter of it's not overly difficult to pick up that deck and play with a minimal amount of like understanding of how it's supposed to work because it's fairly straightforward and to yield early results, and early results provide motivation for people to want to continue to play and continue to learn. Oftentimes someone picks up this game, picks a deck that they think is really cool, plays competitively, get destroyed, they lose all motivation to want to continue. So it makes sense if you're playing a competitive field to pick a competitive deck, and I actually encourage other people to do the same as well. Do I like Chaos Turbo particularly? I think it's a little boring to play myself, but at the same time, even kind of boring sorts of decks can be really fun if you're playing at the top level because it's no longer about itself. It's about the player versus player sort of situation, and it becomes fun for that reason. But as a spectator, it becomes, it's not as interesting because you're just seeing it over and over again. It's only natural to feel that way. But um, I do think it takes a lot of skill to still play these decks and get into these positions. And you'll notice that these players consistently plays pretty well. Um, that being said, I don't think the deck is unbeatable, and clearly the Warrior deck won. And I certainly don't think the Warrior deck's unbeatable. It's really just a matter of, there's a lot of luck component, a lot of matchup. It's not just the luck within the individual game, but it's also luck within matchups and etc. But this applies to all games, regardless of what era you're playing in. At any rate, I think it was a fun tournament to watch, and looking forward to watching more. In the future, I I will probably be switching from. So my general plan for videos going forward will be something of like this. At some point, I'll start making more videos where I play. I take decks, I play them, I put the music that we make behind it, like I have been doing. But I will probably do it more with like EDO Pro or YGO Pro or whatever it's called nowadays, as opposed to Dueling Book, because I'm finding it's very difficult to get on Dueling Book and not run into people that are being overly negative, especially if they realize that I might be making a video or something like that, because I did recently create an account for the channel to make these videos. But yeah, and I'm finding some negative experiences with that. And at the end of the day, it's not really about me showcasing me, it's about me showcasing what a deck could or could not do, right? Um, on top of that, though, I do plan on playing in these tournaments, but I will probably do most of my practicing with docs offline and actual paper, and then bringing it to these GFCs and playing online at that point. So, but you can look forward to those videos in the future of us, because if I do play in those tournaments, I will be recording that as well. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you in the next one. See ya.